Well, once again, welcome all of you. We're just so excited to spend this time. I know many of you right now are tuning in either on Facebook or our YouTube channel to our Wednesday evening Making Marriage Better. And it was just kind of a neat thing. We had thousands upon thousands of you tune in last week and watch and be a part of this. And that's just so exciting for both of us because as we shared last week, we've gone through a lot in our marriage. We've had a lot of dry, difficult seasons and have just worked so hard to get to the other side and actually be at the happiest point that we've ever been, more than 20 years, yep. 20 years into this relationship. So we're excited to share some of the things that we're walking through when it comes to our marriage. Now, one of the things that's important to understand is why we're doing this so short, between 10 to 15 minutes. Some of you asked that question. And the reason is we don't want to just give you all this information. We want you to actually have conversations about what we talked about. The goal isn't for us just to tell you everything. The goal is for you to then take some of these little steps we're going to give you each week and then spend some time having conversations with each other, putting them into practice, because all the knowledge in the world without putting them into practice isn't going to help you. And I think one of the things that we need to understand about our marriage is that this relationship is going to have the greatest influence on your happiness, fulfillment in life than any other earthly relationship. We're going to spend more time together than you will with your parents or your children. That it's generational. I think a lot of people miss this, don't they? Yeah. That your marriage isn't just about you guys, that your children are watching your marriage, and how you guys interact is going to impact and influence who they marry and how your children marry. So there's so much going on, so much at stake with this, as well as spiritual. The scripture says in the book of Peter that that our prayers are hindered when this relationship isn't right. And so once again, this is just so important, and we're just proud of you for taking some time to watch this together and to put these things into practice. And so this week, as normal, we're walking through this book. You can go ahead and share.
So it's the 4 Laws of Love by Jimmy Evans. So we've been reading this and sharing a little bit from our own experience. And like we talk about, we share about the law of priority. So it's important really to make sure that you are spending the time with your significant other, like Scott was saying, and above kids. Like so many people, so many of us, I have, in the past made the mistake of like putting so much energy and time, especially when they're little, and switching my focus, my number one focus, my thoughts, my emotions, my energy needs to go first to this guy over here. So anyways, just so we can keep the focus on the relationship and the importance of keeping a schedule. So we talk about that. It's so important to schedule times together, because otherwise everything else is going to take your time and your attention and your energy. And you don't want to get together at the end of the day and, be exhausted. So
yeah, I mean, the one thing we've been looking at as we walk through, once again, this book, the goal is we're reading through it and sharing some of the things that we're learning or even needing to put into practice with it. The book starts out and talks about how in the Bible, God designed this relationship to be the number one relationship on earth, that you leave your father and mother and you become one flesh. No longer is mom and dad number one, but now this relationship is the most important. And so God designed this to flourish when you and I when we're putting this relationship first above kids and those things. And so you can't be number one and most important just in our heads. It's not just a verse. It has to be in our calendars, in our schedules, giving each other the best of each other and having conversations what that is about. So that's what we talked about last week. You can go to our YouTube channel at Go Journey Church. You can tune into that. But this week, I'm excited because we get to talk about sex.
No, actually, it's about communication. But anyways, a lot of men don't understand that when you take time to communicate and you have meaningful communication, you develop more intimacy in your marriage, which results in more physical intimacy. So they are related. Okay. But today we're talking about communication.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really hit me in our 20 years of marriage that I really had to learn was I never understood how important communication was to her. And what I mean by communication, I'm not just talking about superficial conversations. I'm talking about like deep, meaningful conversations. We're talking about life. I'm sharing my heart. She's sharing her heart. She's sharing her heart more than I'm sharing my heart. Just to be real for a moment there, right? But like, I just never understood. And I think one of the dangers that walks into marriage and anything is so often we tend to not be able to truly understand the other person's needs, right? So men, we might understand the need for physical intimacy. And we understand that there's frustration when that isn't taking place. There's a void in our lives when that isn't taking place. And we get that. And what I never understood was just like I need physical intimacy, she needed that emotional intimacy. These moments where we're having these deep, meaningful conversations and different things. In fact, there was a study done. I talked about what a woman's greatest needs were. And number one and number two were connected in communication. One was security. That was her number one need, to be able to share what she's going through and going through in life, and knowing she can trust her husband, trust that she's not going to be made fun of or maybe not validate those emotions. And the other one was deep, meaningful communication. And so what I had to learn was I could not let my need for it determine the amount, the frequency, that I had to really go, I don't understand why you need to talk for 4 hours about your feelings. I walk through things, more like 6. No, but we were talking this morning that when I'm going through something, I'll pick up the phone and I can talk for 2 minutes and I'm good. But she needed a lot more than that. And so what can often happen in a marriage that breaks down communication is, a lot of times men, we're culprit here, but we think that our needs are what her needs could be. And so we think we're doing good, but we're really not, because her needs are very different. And I think the same thing can happen in intimacy, right? She might think, oh, we're fine. I'm like, no, we're not, And so I think that's one of the things that I had to learn was to have her express, hey, what are your needs when it comes to the area of communication? And then me go, I don't need to understand it. I don't need to agree to it. I just need to make sure this is happening in our relationship. Because what I learned is as our communication went, so did every other aspect of our marriage, including intimacy. And so Raquel, share a little bit just some things maybe about how to communicate, right? Like now we know it's important. So how do we do this and not, let this be ineffective? How can we communicate? Go ahead and share.
Okay, so for the women, just if you have a husband that is not comfortable in communicating and he's like a one-word sentence guy, just start with small steps. So if you decide to have this time communication, start with 5 minutes. And communication is a skill. A lot of people didn't grow up in a home that communication was happening in a healthy way. So you're going to have to learn. It's a learned skill. So you can learn, you can get better at it. Don't use as an excuse like, oh, I just don't. It is important, and it's very, very important to have a healthy relationship. So you can take small steps, start with 5 minutes. And just as a woman, don't just use this time to just dump all of your emotions and your thoughts and everything that's going on. Just be objective, share from your heart, be open about it. But
and understand what your spouse's limit might be, because like for her and I, 30 minutes I can take, and I'm okay with this moments which she's sharing. Like I'm good. And so like she was saying, for some of you, you have to understand where your husband might be out. And 5 minutes might not be enough. Like I think, men, we gotta do better than that. But 2 hours might be a lot for me, but 30 minutes, she needs 30 minutes. Absolutely. I can make that happen. And it doesn't feel like you're oversharing in that timeline versus it might be with your girlfriends. You'll be on the phone for hours.
So if you need to talk for 4 hours, call your girlfriend on the phone. Don't do that to your husband, because what's going to do, it's going to make him not want to do that again. So you just start with small steps. And another thing is keep it positive. Keep it, don't use this time always to talk about all of the issues and all the negative things that are happening. And as a dumping, so it's important to keep it positive, and it's important to to start with small steps. Okay. And so also just be encouraging and explain to him what it means to you, that when you take those times to talk, that you feel that he cares, because he's there, he's listening. And if you're a man and it's hard for you to do a lot of talking, do listening, listen and ask questions, and then share some, and you start, again, little by little. So there's 3 types of communication that are important. So there's the personal communication. That's the time that you're going to talk about like your thoughts, your feelings, what's happening. If you have, issues, set a separate time to talk about those. But again, it's very, very important how you communicate. So the tone of voice, it's going to be really important. And Scott's going to talk a little bit more about that. But there's also proactive communication. That is something that Scott and I do, once in a while. Like we used to do it every week, and now we do it every 2 weeks. We sit down and we talk about our future. What are some major events coming up? What our schedules look like? So there's a unity. And also if there's a stressful event coming up or trips, we can talk about our expectations. What are we looking forward to? It may be different than what he's looking forward to. So we can actually talk about those things before the day of the event happens. So you're being proactive, not reactive. So you're not reacting as the situation is taking place, okay? So I think those are very important. That has helped a lot our relationship, because he's really busy, I'm really busy. And for us to be on the same page, it's very important.
Yeah, and I'm also flexible to the point where I'm like, do you want to come, 50 people come over in 20 minutes? Great. She's a planner. And so, so it helped us a lot to actually proactively communicate, to create that time on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Hey, what's coming up? So she's not surprised. And I think that helped a lot as well.
Yes. That's really important. And the last one is just intimate communication, which means, it can be a 5 minutes a day, or like a comment, on a daily basis, to just say how much I love him, so like just to say, hey, I appreciate so much.
You can take 10 minutes for that if you like.
And I could go on and on, it's even better. But it keeps the relationship, it gives like just a spark, and just to share that you care and how you love that person, what do you appreciate in that person, and just verbalize that.
And sometimes, like even what she said, I think it was yesterday, she's like, she just walked up, and it was intentional, I'm assuming, but it was just like, hey, I just love the fact that you're a person of character. And that no matter what happens in life, you always seem to do the right thing. And so like it was really quick. It didn't take a lot of time, but it feels good. And she's actually worked harder and harder on this kind of thing in our lives. And it really does help our marriage. So just so we understand, there's personal, right? You want to kind of how you're feeling. There's proactive, there's scheduling, and then there's that more, if you will, intimate, which, could be that personal encouragement, could be sexual. I had to tell her stop sexting me because I didn't want the kids to see anything. But that's a joke before I get in trouble. Just all your friends will be on there writing things bad about me. So now I want to kind of close with this and kind of give you some tools before we give you a practical challenge. And the first one I want to do is I want to try to help us go, now that we understand how communication is so important, how do we do it successfully? Because part of the reason maybe you don't want to communicate, or your husband doesn't want to communicate, is because you tried it and it just doesn't go well. I don't know if you've ever had one of those things happen to you. I've had it where you thought it was supposed to go some way and then it did not. And so I want to give you like 4 quick things that helps when you actually get the schedule and you get that stuff going to be successful in communication. The first is this: pick a good time. Like she's a night person, I'm a morning person. So it'd be 11 o'clock at night and I'd be exhausted all day. All I want to do is go to bed and go to sleep. And I would lay my head on the pillow and it would be like a waterfall of conversation. It was like all the words she didn't get in all day is on me at 11 o'clock.
To get out.
Yeah. So I'm like going, this, like, shoot me. Like I can't take this at 11 at night. And in fact, one time there was actually some snoring and I got in trouble during that conversation. But that wasn't a good time for that. And so then we tried mornings. And she's up till 2 a.m., but not up at 8 a.m.
I used to though. Like there's kids is different.
Yeah. So it was hard for us at 8 o'clock. Those conversations wouldn't go real well, or 7 o'clock. So we had to find a time, like we choose a time that worked. And for us, what works is coming home from work, after work for me, spend some time with the kids, kind of the dog, Raquel, have a good time. And then we'll take a half an hour out by the waterfall. And it's like a great spot to kind of have a conversation. And those have worked great for us. So choose a time. Secondly, choose the right place. This is not in front of a television while you're watching Sports Center. This is not while you're on social media. You got to get distraction free so you can actually have those real conversations. So choose a time, choose a place, that whatever works best for you guys in order to have real meaningful conversation. And I would recommend try to get a half an hour where you can really go, hey, here's our time. Let's talk about what's going on to move forward. Now, a couple things you want to share.
Yes, so it's very important that you choose the right tone. So this is like everything. You can communicate the same thing in anger, and you can communicate the same thing out of love. So it's really important for you to have the right heart when you're communicating, having the right tone. So when you're saying whatever you need to communicate, that you communicate with respect, that you communicate with love, and that you communicate with value, that you value the other person. So you got to think that, you're a couple, you're on the same team. So a lot of times, like if you have a conflict, I'm trying to see, I'm right, you're wrong. So, you use also the words you. So you start accusing, you did this, you did that. And, so it's also important to use the right words, choose the right tone, choose the right words. So don't use the word you, because the moment you start accusing and pointing a finger, the other person is not going to receive it. And if you're speaking with an angry tone, the other person is going to shut down and be angry back at you. So it's very important to use the word I. For example, if you're frustrated about something, you could say, when I take most responsibility for the kids, I feel unsupported. So like,
this is purely hypothetical.
Yes, just to clarification. He is an amazing husband. He really is. He's amazing with the kids. Oh. So this is totally not the case. Okay.
Now the cleanliness part, leaving stuff around,
yes,
that might be a little more truthful.
For sure. So so again, you could feel so tempted to use the word you. When you leave everything out. You leave things all the time. I'm so tired, but he's gonna shut down, so you have to just say how you feel. I feel overwhelmed when I keep cleaning and the house seems to be always dirty or things are not put away. Is it possible to have a conversation about that?
Well, and I'll say this, when you have the right tone, as Proverbs says, a gentle answer turns away, sometimes turns away wrath, but a harsh answer like stirs anger. So tone is very, very important. How you say what you say is just as important of what you say. But the other side of that, when she started shifting her language, instead of accusing me and saying you did, or by the way, never say you always or you never, because those are not true. But when she would make those statements that would say, hey, when you did, or I felt this when this action took place, all of a sudden now I don't want to hurt her. So she's not accusing me. She's acknowledging that she felt hurt. And it just made it so much easier on those rare moments that I was wrong to actually, own that part, because I didn't feel attacked with that. So tone's important, the right words, the right tone. And then the other thing is, a couple things was, one is I had to learn to choose to validate. So when she would bring up to something to me that maybe I didn't agree with, or maybe I felt it was a level 5 and she was making it a level 10. Once again, not saying she's wrong or that I'm right or that I'm wrong, she's right. That was just my perception of it. I had this tendency to go, oh, you're just being emotional. Like I can still look at that stairs when I said that, right? Or you're being irrational. I've learned not to say that now, but like,
not good.
No, but I felt that, like that's what I felt. And so I had to learn to go, wow, like listening, and this is so important for me. I had to learn that when I was listening to her, that listening was loving. And so when she would come to me with those feelings, those feelings for her were real. Whether they were right or not was really secondary. They were real. And I had to learn that my job was not to correct. My job was not to minimalize, but it was fix it, which that's hard.
Because women, a lot of times, like, I'm a verbal processor. So like, just the moment that I'm actually able to put my feelings out or what I'm thinking and feeling, I already feel better. I really just needed him to listen. I don't need him to fix, or I don't need him to think, or it's irrational, or this, or make sense. Just by talking, women feel better. So understand that as a man, like that. Then once I talk, I'm already feeling 50, 60% better just by saying it. So I don't feel overwhelmed anymore, so all of a sudden I feel better. But just be a good listener. I think that's excellent.
It is hard. I literally have had to bite my tongue at times. But I've understood, hey, listening is how I love her. So I want to love her. I want to be a good husband. And so by me shutting my mouth and just validating, that's actually doing more to express love than solving a problem that she doesn't even want me to solve in the first place. And the last thing is, and we'll let you guys put this into practice, is choose to own your own mistakes. And what I mean, and this is, don't blame. And I know it's so easy to blame. Don't say, well, it was just a bad day, or you just don't understand. Like this is something that this is one of our family values. And what we teach our children is we admit we're wrong and we say we are sorry. And if I ever am wrong one day, I promise I will do this going forward. No, and I mean that because it's just so, if you messed up, just own it and move on. They already know you messed up. But when you deflect and blame, all you're doing is your partner just feels like you're not even self-aware. And so they're going to keep coming after you.
Selfish.
And it just doesn't work. And so even a few weeks ago, I had a really bad day. Not that I'm making excuses, but it was just one of those times where it's probably the first time in this entire pandemic where I was very frustrated. It was a rough time. And then my children, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, didn't listen. And I asked them to get out of the pool 4 times. I mean, I walked up and they were still in the pool and I just lost it on them. I just lost it, so frustrated. And I even sent them out of the house with mama for a little bit for me to just cool down. And that's not me. No. But when I came back that night and we were watching a movie, I stopped the movie and I said, boys, I just want you to know, and mom, listen, daddy was sorry. I should not have yelled at you during that time. I should have just whooped your butt, but I should not have loved, and I'm wrong. Will you forgive me? And so I just learned. I just own it. Like, admit you're wrong, say you're sorry. You bring that humility into your conversations. They're no longer going to look at your issues. You've owned them, and now you can actually have a good, meaningful conversation. So I want to end it with this. Last thing I want to challenge you to do is just pray before you talk. Yeah. Because sometimes the only way to have the right tone, to use the right words, to learn to validate and be patient, and to learn to be humble in your conversation is when you seek God first. And so, you might need to just, if it's going to get difficult, if that's where that conversation is going, you might need to just pray for a few minutes beforehand to let God's Spirit give you the strength, the humility to do that. So here's my challenge to you. Would you just schedule a half an hour with your spouse and begin to walk through these conversations? Pick a where, right? A place, the right time, figure out how to do it, right tone, right words, validate, own what you need to own. Have this conversation. You start to do this on a weekly basis, and I promise you, your relationship is going to get better. I love you guys, and once again, can't wait to see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you so much.